Voidgast laughed. The wounds they'd created began pulling everything nearby into them, not healing, consuming. Buildings, ground, even light itself was sucked into those void wounds. The consumption accelerated. Chunks of the city simply disappeared into the wounds Jiren and Toppo had created, pulled into the void like water down a drain. Worse, Goku could feel the creature growing stronger with each thing it consumed. "Stop!" he shouted to them. "You're feeding it! Every attack makes it stronger!" But his warning came too late. The wounds sealed, but Voidgast's form had grown. It now towered even higher, its body swelling with stolen matter and energy. New limbs sprouted from its torso, arms that terminated in hands with too many fingers, each one dripping with that reality-erasing ichor. "Yes," Voidgast's voice resonated with satisfaction. "Destruction feeds me. Hakai feeds me. Everything feeds me." Toppo stumbled back, horror dawning on his face. "Our god of destruction energy? It's making it stronger?" "All attacks are," Goku said grimly, releasing the chains as the last civilians were evacuated. "It doesn't just consume matter, it consumes the concept of destruction itself. Every time we damage it, we're just giving it more fuel." Jiren's eyes narrowed. Then how do we stop something that grows stronger from being fought? That was the question, wasn't it? Goku reached out through his connection to the Dragon Realm, his consciousness touching the nexus even across the dimensional barrier. "Sephiroth, Luminara, this thing gets stronger from every attack. How am I supposed to fight it?" Their response came immediately, voices echoing in his mind with urgency. "You cannot fight it conventionally. Voidgast exists by consuming existence itself. Every form of destruction, every attack, every defensive technique, all of it is fuel to a creature born from the death of universes." "Then what do I do?" "You must give it what it wants, but not in the way it expects." Goku felt confusion ripple through him. Give it what it wants? It wants to consume everything. Yes, it feeds on death and emptiness and the absence of things, so you must do what seems impossible. You must overwhelm it with the opposite. Give it so much life, so much hope, so much raw creative energy that it cannot process it all. Make it choke on existence itself. Understanding dawned like sunrise. It was crazy, absolutely insane, the kind of plan that either save everyone or doom them all. Perfect. But before he could act, Voidgast moved. With speed that contradicted its massive size, the creature lunged forward. Multiple arms reached out simultaneously, each one targeting a different Pride Trooper. Goku watched in horror as Vuan was caught by one massive hand. The Pride Trooper's scream lasted only a second before he simply ceased to exist, not killed, erased, as if he'd never been born. The universe itself forgot he ever existed. "Vuan!" Khosrol's anguished cry rang out. More hands reached, more Pride Troopers in danger. Goku's aura exploded with fury. "Not on my watch!" He teleported, not using instant transmission, but the direct spatial manipulation that came with Shinran mode. One moment he was beside Jiren, the next he was intercepting Voidgast's hand before it could grab Khosrol. The impact jarred every bone in his body. The void flesh pressed against his dragon energy, erasure meeting creation in a violent stalemate. Goku screamed from the effort of holding it back, his muscles burning, his energy draining rapidly. "Get back!" he shouted to the Pride Troopers. "All of you! This isn't a fight you can win!" "We don't abandon," Casserole started. "You're not abandoning anything," Goku interrupted, still straining against the crushing pressure. "You're protecting the civilians. That's your job right now. Let me handle this thing." Jiren appeared beside him, adding his own power to hold back the void hand. "What's your plan?" "Something stupid. But first, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "When I give the signal, I need you and Topo to get every Pride Trooper and every civilian as far from here as possible, at least 3 star systems away." Jiren's eyes widened slightly, one of the few times Goku had ever seen the stoic warrior show surprise. "What are you planning?" "To give this thing the biggest meal it's ever had," Goku said. Then he grinned despite their desperate situation. "Trust me?" For a long moment, Jiren studied him. Then he nodded once. "I trust you." Together, they pushed back against the Void Hand, creating enough space for Goku to slip away. The moment he did, Jiren's power flared to its absolute maximum, holding the creature's attention. Goku dropped down to the ruined city below, landing in what had once been a central plaza. Around him, buildings stood partially erased, their edges simply ending where reality had been consumed. He took a deep breath and let his Shinron aura fade completely. The golden white light vanished, leaving him standing in just his base form. His orange gi was torn and burned, his body showing signs of exhaustion and damage. To any observer, he looked like he was surrendering. Voidgast's countless eyes all turned toward him simultaneously. "Dragon King surrenders?" The creature's voice carried a note of confusion. "Nah," Goku said calmly, settling into a familiar stance. His hands came together at his side, forming the position he'd used thousands of times before. "I'm just getting ready to give you the biggest meal you've ever had." He closed his eyes and reached not for his own ki, but through the connection to the Dragon Realm, through the symbols Luminara and Sephiroth had placed on him, through the very essence of what it meant to be Dragon King. He reached for the nexus itself. In the Dragon Realm, alarms blared again. Dragons across every universe felt it simultaneously. Their king is pulling directly from the source of all dragon power. "He's drawing from the nexus," a young dragon shouted in panic. "He'll kill himself." Luminara and Sephiroth stood before the great sphere of energy, watching as one of the thousands of threads, the one connected to Goku, began to glow with unprecedented intensity. "He's pulling too much," Sephiroth said, his voice tight with concern. "His mortal form can't channel this level of power. It will tear him apart." "I know," Luminara said quietly, "but look at what he's attempting." They both fell silent, witnessing through their connection what Goku was planning. The sheer audacity of it took their breath away. "If he succeeds," Sephiroth began, "he'll have transformed a creature of pure destruction into something entirely new. But if he fails, he dies, and the Nexus will be severely weakened, and Voidgast will consume Universe 11 before moving on to the Dragon Realm itself." They exchanged glances. "Do we stop him?" asked Sephiroth. Luminara was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No, we trust him. He's earned that much." In Universe 11, Goku's body began to change. Dragon energy flooded into him at levels that should have been impossible. His veins lit up like golden circuitry beneath his skin. His eyes blazed pure white, pupils disappearing entirely. The symbols on his chest and forehead burned so brightly they were visible through his gi, casting sharp shadows across the ruined plaza. His hair, already wild, began to flow upward as if caught in an invisible wind, but it wasn't turning golden like Super Saiyan. Instead, individual strands started shifting through every color of the spectrum, becoming prismatic, reflecting every possible hue. Pain lanced through every cell of his body. His mortal form was never meant to channel this much raw creative force. He could feel himself beginning to come apart at the seams, his physical structure unable to contain the power flowing through it. Blood ran from his nose, from his ears, from the corners of his eyes. But he didn't stop. "Jiren!" he shouted, his voice distorted by the sheer energy. "Now!" Jiren didn't hesitate. In an instant, he appeared among the Pride Troopers. "Evacuation Protocol Omega! Move everyone, now!" Topo immediately understood. His god of destruction energy flared, and he began creating portals for rapid mass evacuation. Dispo moved faster than he had ever had before, gathering any stragglers. "But Goku," Kasserole protested. "He's saving us," Jiren said firmly. "Don't waste his sacrifice by staying." Within seconds, the Pride Troopers had evacuated every remaining civilian and most of their own forces. Jiren was the last to go, taking one final look at Goku's glowing form before disappearing through a portal. Now, Goku stood alone before Voidgast. The creature sensed the power building in him and lunged forward with all its arms, desperate to consume this concentration of energy before it could be released. Ka! Goku's hands glowed with power beyond anything he'd ever wielded. Not the blue of his normal Kamehameha, not even the golden energy of his god forms. This was prismatic light, every color and no color simultaneously, the pure essence of creation itself. May! His body shook violently. Cracks began appearing in his skin, light bleeding through like he was a clay vessel barely containing a star. Voidgast's hands were almost upon him, void flesh reaching to erase him from existence. Ha! The energy built to critical levels. Goku could feel his connection to the nexus straining, could feel every dragon in existence pouring their power into him. This wasn't just his attack. It was the collective hope of every dragon across every universe channeled through their king. The creature's hands made contact with his aura. May! For a fraction of a second, erasure met creation. Void touched existence. The two fundamental forces of reality clashed at the point where Voidgast's flesh met Goku's energy. Reality screamed. Then Goku released everything. The beam that erupted from his hands was impossible to describe in conventional terms. It was every color and no color. It was sound and silence. It was the moment of a universe's birth compressed into a focused blast. It was hope made manifest. The beam struck Voidgast dead center, and the creature's scream shook every universe simultaneously. This wasn't pain. Voidgast had endured pain before, had even enjoyed it as a novelty. This was something the creature had never experienced in its entire existence across countless eons. This was overwhelming fullness. The creature existed by consuming emptiness, by feeding on the absence of things. Its entire being was structured around void, around nothing, around the death of stars and the silence after civilizations fell. And Goku was forcing it to consume pure existence itself. The beam didn't destroy Voidgast's form, it filled it. Every cell, every impossible particle of void flesh was flooded with dragon energy, with life, with the memories of every wish ever granted across every universe, every moment of joy when the Dragon Balls had brought back a loved one, every celebration when an impossible dream had been achieved, every tear of happiness shed by someone whose hope had been restored. Goku poured it all into the creature, channeling centuries of accumulated positive dragon energy directly into a being built to contain only negativity. "Stop! Too much! Too much!" Voidgast thrashed, trying desperately to escape. Its arms flailed wildly, tearing at the sky, at the ground, at anything in reach. But the beam followed relentlessly, locked onto the creature's essence. The void flesh began to change. Where before it had been absolute darkness, now light was appearing within it. Pinpricks at first, like stars being born in an empty cosmos. Then more and more, until the entire creature was filled with countless points of light.
Goku's scream joined Voidgast's. His body was disintegrating, unable to withstand the strain of channeling this much power. The cracks in his skin widened, brilliant light pouring out. His fingers were starting to come apart, dissolving into pure energy. But he could feel it working, could feel Voidgast's nature changing, transforming under the assault of concentrated hope. In the Dragon Realm, every dragon watched in awe and terror as their king burned himself away to save them all. "He's dying," a young dragon whispered. "He's transcending," Luminara corrected, tears streaming down her face. "Watch." The beam intensified one final time. Goku poured every last bit of energy into it, not just from the nexus, but from himself. His life force, his soul, everything that made him Goku flowed into the attack. His body was almost completely dissolved now, more light than matter, but his will remained unbreakable. With one final pulse, he released the absolute totality of dragon energy he'd gathered. The explosion engulfed Voidgast entirely. When the light finally faded, the creature was gone. In its place floated a massive egg of crystallized dragon energy. It was beautiful, opalescent and rainbow-hued, roughly the size of a small moon. Within it, something slumbered. Something that had been Voidgast, but was Voidgast no longer. The creature that had fed on death and emptiness for eons had been forcibly transformed into something that embodied life and fullness. Goku hadn't destroyed it. He'd changed its fundamental nature, rewriting what it was at the most basic level. It would sleep now, perhaps for millennia, dreaming of the hope it had been shown. And when it finally awakened, it would be something entirely new, something that created rather than consumed. But Goku wasn't conscious to see his victory. His body, or what remained of it, fell from the sky. He was barely held together, more a collection of dissolving energy than a physical form. The symbols on his chest and forehead still glowed, but weakly, flickering like candles in the wind. A portal of golden light opened beneath him as he catched him before he struck the ground. The Dragon Realm was reclaiming his king, pulling him back to safety. As he fell through dimensions, his fading consciousness registered voices. Jiren's voice, "Son Goku, thank you." Toppo's voice, "He saved us all, again." The Pride Troopers, all of them, bowing in respect to the falling warrior. Then he was in the Dragon Realm, being lowered gently into a pool of pure healing essence. Sephiroth and Luminara stood over him, their expressions mixed with relief, concern, and something like awe. "You magnificent idiot! You nearly erased yourself from existence." Did it work?" Goku managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. "It worked," Luminara confirmed, tears falling freely now. "Voidgast sleeps, transformed. You've saved not just Universe 11, but potentially every universe. That creature would have eventually consumed them all." "Good. That's good." Goku's eyes were already closing. "Rest now," Luminara said softly, placing a claw gently on what remained of his forehead. "You've more than earned it." Goku wanted to argue, wanted to say there was still work to do, still dragons to heal, still responsibilities to fulfill, but darkness was pulling him down, and he was too exhausted to fight it. He slept. For 3 days he remained unconscious, his body slowly reconstituting itself from the raw dragon energy that filled the healing pool. It was a delicate process. He had dissolved so thoroughly that putting him back together required the combined effort of dozens of elder dragons. They worked in shifts, carefully reconstructing his cells, his organs, his very existence from the scattered pieces of energy he'd become. It was like assembling a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces kept trying to drift apart. "His mortal body wasn't meant to channel that much power," a one healer dragon said worriedly. "There may be permanent damage." "Then we fix it," Sephiroth said firmly. "Whatever it takes. He saved us, we save him." On the 3rd day, Goku's eyes finally opened. He found himself in a chamber he didn't recognize, floating in a pool of softly glowing liquid that felt like warm sunlight. His body felt strange, not painful, but different somehow. Changed. Luminara was sitting beside the pool, having apparently been waiting for him to wake. "Welcome back, Dragon King," she said with a gentle smile. Goku sat up slowly, testing his limbs. Everything seemed to work, but he could feel that he'd been altered on a fundamental level. His connection to the nexus was stronger now, more permanent. It was as if the massive channeling of dragon energy had changed him, made him less purely mortal and more something else. "How long was I out?" he asked. 3 days. Your body was almost completely destroyed. We had to rebuild you cell by cell." Goku looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers. They looked normal, but he could see faint traces of the draconic symbols beneath his skin now, as if they'd been permanently etched into his very being. "What happened to me?" "You pushed beyond the limits of what a mortal, even a Saiyan, should be capable of. You channeled enough energy to birth a universe through a physical form meant to contain only a fraction of that power. By all rights, you should have been annihilated. That you survived at all is miraculous. But you're changed. Your connection to the Nexus is permanent now. Even if you wanted to give up being Dragon King, you couldn't. It's woven into your existence now. You'll always be able to feel the dragons, always be connected to the source of dragon energy." Goku processed this information. Part of him felt a momentary loss of pang, the idea that he could never fully return to his old life. But another part, a larger part, felt right about this. "I can live with that," he said finally. "It means I can help better, right? Heal the dragons more easily?" Luminara smiled. "Yes, you'll be a better Dragon King for it, though you'll need to be more careful going forward. Another stunt like what you pulled in Universe 11 might actually kill you permanently, even with our healing abilities." "Noted." Goku stood up from the pool, dragon energy evaporating off his skin instantly, leaving him dry. Someone had provided a new gi, this one with subtle golden threading that matched his Shinron aura. "So what's the damage? How many dragons were affected when I pulled all that power from the Nexus?" "That's the surprising part," a new voice said. Zarathos entered the chamber, his crimson scales gleaming. "Instead of weakening the Nexus, what you did actually strengthened it." Goku blinked. "How's that work?" "The energy you channeled into Voidgast didn't disappear. Yes, it transformed the creature, but it also created something new, a being that will eventually add to the cosmic balance rather than subtract from it. You essentially invested dragon energy and will eventually get a return on that investment." "Plus," Sephiroth added, entering behind Zarathos, "every dragon across every universe felt what you did. They felt your willingness to sacrifice yourself completely for their sake. That faith, that hope, that absolute commitment, it resonated through the Nexus and actually strengthened all of us." "Morale boost?" Goku suggested. "More than that, belief has power, Goku. When every dragon in existence simultaneously believes in their king, when they all have absolute faith in the system, that belief itself becomes energy, becomes strength." Goku grinned. "So I accidentally made everyone stronger by almost killing myself? That's pretty cool." The 3 elder dragons exchanged glances that clearly said they were dealing with someone whose priorities were somewhat skewed. "Well, yes," Luminara said diplomatically. "Please try not to accidentally strengthen us through near-death experiences too often." "No promises," Goku said cheerfully. Then his expression grew more serious. "But I felt something else. Even while I was fighting Voidgast, I could sense there's something bigger out there, isn't it? Something that sent Voidgast as a test." The chamber fell silent. Finally, Sephiroth nodded gravely. "Yes, we've felt it too. Voidgast was powerful, but it was just a scout, a probe sent to test our defenses and gauge the Dragon King's strength. The real threat is still out there," Zarathos continued, "in the darkness between universes, in the spaces where reality grows thin. We don't know what it is yet. We can't see it clearly, but we know it's aware of us, now. Aware of you. And it's planning, building, waiting for the right moment to strike."
Goku's grin turned fierce. "Good. Let it plan. Let it wait.
because when it does come, I'll be ready. He walked toward the chamber's exit, his new G flowing around him. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at the three elders. In the meantime, I've got dragons to heal and a cosmic balance to maintain. That's my job now, right? That's your job, Sephiroth confirmed with something that might have been a smile. Welcome to kingship, Goku. It's going to be a long eternity. Sounds perfect, Goku said. He stepped out of the chamber and made his way back to the Nexus room. The great sphere of energy pulsed welcomingly as he approached, and he could feel every dragon connected to it. Some were still wounded, still suffering from mortal abuse, but now they had hope, real hope, because they knew their king would come for them. Goku placed his hands on the Nexus, feeling the familiar rush of connection. There was so much work to do. Dragons to heal, balance to restore, systems to reform so that mortals couldn't abuse the Dragon Balls as easily. And somewhere out there, a threat was building, something that made even Voidgast seem small. But Goku had never backed down from a challenge in his life, or his death, or his multiple deaths, really. He was the Dragon King now, protector of hope across all universes, guardian of the source of miracles. And he was going to be the best damn Dragon King existence had ever seen. His Shinran aura blazed to life around him, gold and white light mixing with the rainbow hues of the Nexus itself. Through thousands of connections, across billions of light years, in dimensions beyond mortal comprehension, dragons felt their king's presence and were comforted. Hope still existed. And as long as Son Goku drew breath, or whatever passed for breath in his new semi-divine state, hope would continue to exist. The real battle was still coming. He could feel it in his bones, in the way reality itself seemed to hold its breath sometimes. Something vast and terrible was moving in the darkness, planning, preparing. But let it come. Goku would be ready. He always was. It started with whispers, dragons in distant realms suddenly going silent. Then Goku felt it, a wrongness in the cosmic flow that made every scale on his transformed body stand on edge. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced before, not in all his years as a warrior, not in all his battles against gods and monsters, not even in his ascension to the role of Dragon King. This was something primal. Something that touched the very foundation of existence itself. The Dragon Realm existed beyond mortal comprehension, a place where time flowed like honey and space curved upon itself in impossible geometries. Here, among crystalline mountains that sang with ancient melodies and rivers of pure starlight, Goku, the Dragon King, stood at the precipice of his greatest challenge. The realm itself was a masterpiece of creation, a testament to the power and artistry of dragons who had shaped reality according to their will for eons uncounted. Mountains floated in the air, defying gravity not through magic, but through the sheer creative force that permeated every atom of this dimension. Waterfalls flowed upward, their waters catching the light of 3 suns that orbited each other in an eternal dance. Gardens grew in mid-air, their roots drinking from clouds of pure elemental energy. His transformation into the Shinran form had been complete for what mortals would measure as 3 years, though in the Dragon Realm such measurements held little meaning. A day here could be a year elsewhere, or a century could pass in what felt like minutes. Time was not a river that flowed in one direction, but an ocean that could be navigated in any direction one chose. His one had the knowledge and power to do so. His body had evolved beyond the Saiyan warrior he once was, transcending the limitations of flesh and blood to become something more, something that existed on multiple planes of reality simultaneously. Silver scales now covered portions of his arms and chest, each one inscribed with runic patterns that pulsed with the rhythm of creation itself. These were not mere decorations or symbols of status. Each rune was a living equation, a fragment of the cosmic code that governed how reality functioned. They shifted and changed based on his thoughts and intentions, adapting to whatever task he set himself to. When he focused on defense, they would arrange themselves into patterns that could deflect attacks from beings powerful enough to shatter planets. When he channeled creative energy, they would glow with an inner light that could reshape matter at the molecular level. His hair, once wild and black in his Saiyan youth, now shimmered with an ethereal quality, shifting between obsidian and platinum depending on the angle of light. Each strand seemed to contain its own universe, tiny galaxies swirling within if one looked closely enough. It moved of its own accord sometimes, responding to currents of cosmic energy that flowed through the dragon realm like invisible winds. His eyes, those eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless battles, that had seen friends die and be resurrected, that had looked upon gods and refused to blink, now held the depth of cosmic understanding, swirling with galaxies yet unborn. When Goku looked at something now, he didn't just see its surface appearance. He saw its history, its potential futures, the web of cause and effect that connected it to everything else in existence. He could see the molecular bonds that held matter together, the quantum probabilities that determined whether something would exist or not exist, the threads of fate that wove through every living being. It was overwhelming at first, this level of perception, but he had learned to filter it, to focus on what was relevant and ignore the infinite noise of information that constantly bombarded his enhanced senses. The Dragon Council had been in session beneath the great worm tree, an entity so vast that entire civilizations of lesser dragons made their homes in its roots. The tree was not truly a tree in the botanical sense. It was a living manifestation of the concept of growth and connection, a physical representation of the network that linked all dragons across all dimensions. Its trunk was wider than most planets, its branches extended into other dimensions entirely, and its leaves were said to contain the accumulated knowledge of every dragon that had ever lived. Goku stood among legends in this sacred place. Bahamut, the platinum dragon whose scales contained the history of reality itself, was a being of such immense power and wisdom that even other ancient dragons spoke his name with reverence. He had existed before the current iteration of the multiverse, had witnessed the death of previous cosmic cycles and the birth of new ones. His body was covered in platinum scales that reflected not just light, but time itself. One could look into them and see events from the past or glimpses of possible futures. His eyes, ancient beyond measure, had watched civilizations rise from primordial chaos and fall back into entropy countless times. Tiamat, the five-headed chromatic queen whose very breath could reshape matter, represented the wild, untamed aspect of draconic power. Where Bahamut was order and wisdom, Tiamat was chaos and passion. Her 5 heads, white, black, green, blue, and red, each had its own personality, its own way of viewing the world, yet they functioned in perfect harmony when necessary. The white head spoke with the voice of reason and logic. The black head whispered secrets and schemes. The green head hissed with cunning and deception. The red head crackled with pure, unbridled fury. Together, they made Tiamat a force of nature unto herself, capable of creation and destruction on scales that mortals could scarcely imagine. Shenron, his old friend and guide who had first introduced him to this realm, coiled nearby. Compared to the truly ancient dragons like Bahamut and Tiamat, Shenron was almost young, though he had still existed for millions of years by mortal reckoning. He had been the bridge between Goku's mortal life and his ascension to Dragon King, patiently teaching him the ways of dragons, helping him understand that power was not just about strength, but wisdom, creativity, and responsibility. Shenron's serpentine body was a deep crimson, his scales smooth and perfect, his eyes holding a warmth that belied his immense power. And there were dozens of others, each a being of incomprehensible power and wisdom. Io, whose crystalline scales showed swirling nebulae within, was said to be the first dragon, the progenitor from whom all others descended. Sardior, the ruby dragon, whose mastery over psionic powers allowed him to reshape reality with thought alone. Null, the dragon of endings and transitions, whose very presence reminded all beings that nothing lasts forever. Chronepsis, who existed outside the normal flow of time and could see all moments simultaneously. Each of these beings could have destroyed Universe 7 with a casual blink of an eye.
Thought, yet they gathered here in council to discuss matters of cosmic importance with the respect and decorum of scholars. The council had been in session for what would have been weeks in mortal time, discussing the intricate balance of creation and destruction, the delicate threading of fate between universes, and the responsibilities that came with shaping reality. These sessions were not dry academic affairs, they were passionate debates that could literally shake the foundations of dimensions. Dragons did not hide their emotions or temper their arguments for the sake of politeness. When they disagreed, they made it known, and the clash of their wills could create storms in the fabric of space-time itself. Goku had grown to love these sessions, even when they became heated debates that could literally shake the foundations of dimensions. He had learned so much in his time here, far more than he had ever learned in all his years of training and fighting. How to sense the cosmic flow, the invisible current of cause and effect that connected all things. It was like learning to read the universe itself, understanding that every action rippled outward infinitely, affecting things in ways both obvious and subtle. A dragon's decision here could influence the development of a civilization in a distant galaxy. A creative act could prevent a catastrophe that wouldn't occur for millennia. He had learned how to heal rifts in reality caused by temporal paradoxes or dimensional tears. Time travel, which Goku had experienced firsthand through Trunks and his own adventures, created wounds in the fabric of causality. Dimensions that brushed too closely together could tear like fabric, creating dangerous breaches where the laws of physics broke down. The dragons had techniques to repair these damages, to smooth over the wrinkles in space-time and restore the natural order. It was intricate work that required both immense power and delicate precision, like performing surgery on reality itself. The dragons had been patient teachers, and Goku had been a surprisingly adept student once he understood that this wasn't about fighting, but about understanding the fight itself, why conflicts arose, how they could be resolved, and when intervention was necessary versus when it would cause more harm than good. His Saiyan instinct had always been to solve problems with his fists, to train harder and become stronger. But here he learned that sometimes strength meant restraint, that the mightiest act was often choosing not to act at all. But today, something felt different. Goku's newly attuned senses picked up a dissonance in the cosmic symphony. The universe, he had learned, was like a vast orchestra playing an infinitely complex piece of music. Every atom vibrated at its own frequency, every star sang its own song, every living being added their voice to the chorus. Normally, even with all this complexity, there was a fundamental harmony to it all, a sense that everything was working together in some grand design. But now, there was a note that didn't fit. It was subtle at first, like a single instrument slightly out of tune in a vast orchestra. A casual listener might not even notice it, but to Goku's trained senses, it was as obvious as a scream in a library. Other dragons began to notice it too, their ancient eyes narrowing, their massive heads turning toward distant realms as if listening to something only they could hear. Conversations faltered and died. The passionate debates that had filled the chamber moments before gave way to uneasy silence. "Do you feel that?" Goku asked, interrupting a discussion about dimensional anchoring techniques. His voice carried an edge of concern that made several younger dragons look up in alarm. If the Dragon King was worried, then something was truly wrong. Shenron's serpentine body coiled tighter, his red eyes flickering with concern. Yes, something is wrong. His voice, usually so calm and measured, had taken on a tension that Goku had rarely heard from his mentor. The whispers started then, not verbal whispers, but psychic echoes transmitted through the dragon network, a vast telepathic internet that allowed dragons separated by infinite distances to communicate instantaneously. Messages of confusion, then concern, then alarm rippled through the network like shockwaves through water.
"The dragons of the seventh spiral have gone silent," one voice reported, from somewhere in the outer reaches of creation. The seventh spiral was a distant realm, far from the central hub of the dragon realm, but it was home to hundreds of dragons who served as guardians and nurturers of young civilizations. "Contact lost with the guardians of the temporal nexus," another voice added. The temporal nexus was a crucial node in the structure of space-time, a place where multiple timelines intersected and had to be carefully managed to prevent paradoxes from cascading out of control. If the guardians there had fallen silent, it could mean catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. "Something is spreading through the outer realms," a third voice said, and this one carried unmistakable fear. Dragons did not frighten easily. They had faced cosmic horrors, battled beings of pure entropy, survived the death of previous universes. For a dragon to be afraid meant that whatever they were facing was truly terrible. Goku stood, his Shinran senses reaching out like tendrils of consciousness across the vast expanse of creation. His awareness expanded outward, touching distant realms, feeling the pulse of life and energy that flowed through the cosmos. What he felt made his blood run cold, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his mortal days of facing existential threats. A wrongness, a corruption, a void where life and energy should flow. It was like looking at a beautiful painting and seeing a section where the canvas had been burned away, leaving only absence. Not darkness. Darkness at least was something, a presence in its own right.
This was the opposite of presence, a hungry nothingness that consumed everything it touched. Bahamut rose to his full height, his platinum scales dimming as if reflecting the growing darkness elsewhere. His 5 eyes, which normally gleamed with inner light, seemed shadowed. "It cannot be," he whispered, his voice trembling with something Goku had never heard from the ancient dragon before. Fear. True existential fear, of the sort that comes from recognizing a threat to one's very existence. "What is it?" Goku demanded, his warrior instincts flaring to life, even as his Dragon King wisdom urged caution. His body tensed, scales rippling as power gathered beneath his skin. Whatever this threat was, he would face it as he had faced every other challenge in his life, head-on and without hesitation. Shenron materialized beside him in his smaller, more mobile form, still massive by mortal standards, easily 50 feet long, but compact enough to move swiftly through the chamber. His expression was grave, the kind of gravity that comes from witnessing the impossible made manifest. "Dragon King," Shenron began, each word carefully chosen, weighted with the burden of ancient knowledge. "We have a crisis. The black energy has returned." The council chamber erupted into chaos at those words. Dragons who had maintained composure through cosmic catastrophes now showed visible signs of distress. Some roared in denial, their voices shaking the very foundations of the realm, causing the crystalline mountains to ring like bells and the floating islands to tremble. Others coiled defensively, ancient instincts overriding millennia of wisdom, their bodies unconsciously assuming combat postures that hadn't been needed in ages. A few of the younger dragons, those who had never heard the old stories, looked confused and frightened by the elders' reactions, their eyes darting from one ancient face to another, seeking understanding. "Silence!" Bahamut's voice crashed through the chamber like a thunderclap, instantly restoring order. The sheer force of his will, backed by eons of authority, cut through the panic like a blade through water. His 5 eyes, for the Platinum Dragon, possessed more than the standard 2, each one able to see different aspects of reality, blazed with authority. Panic serves no purpose. We must assess and act. Goku moved forward, his presence commanding despite being relatively young compared to the ancient beings around him. In 3 years as Dragon King, he had earned their respect, not through age or ancient lineage, but through his actions, his willingness to learn, and his genuine care for all forms of life. "I need to understand what we're facing. What is the black energy?"
Bahamut's expression grew heavy with the weight of ages, the burden of knowledge that stretched back to the dawn of creation itself. He looked at Goku with eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of countless realities, and in those eyes was a sorrow deeper than oceans. An ancient corruption, Dragon King, born not from darkness as mortals understand it, but from something far more fundamental and far more terrible, the opposite of creation itself. He gestured with one massive claw, and the air before them shimmered, reality bending to his will as he created an illusion to illustrate his words. We dragons embody the principle of creation, of bringing form and meaning to the cosmos. We take the raw potential of existence and shape it into something beautiful, something meaningful. We create worlds, nurture civilizations, inspire art and science and love. This is our purpose, woven into the very essence of what we are. The illusion showed dragons at work, breathing life into barren worlds, guiding young species towards enlightenment, creating wonders that took Goku's breath away, even though he knew they were just images. Then the image darkened, corrupted by spreading blackness. The black energy embodies the desire for absolute void, Bahamut continued, his voice heavy with dread. Not simply destruction, which is itself part of the cosmic cycle. Destruction can be necessary, even beautiful in its own way. The supernova that seeds space with heavy elements, the forest fire that clears the way for new growth, the death that makes room for new life. No, the black energy is something beyond destruction. It is the cessation of all possibility, the ending not just of what is, but of what could ever be. Tiamat's 5 heads all spoke in unison, creating a haunting harmony that made the air itself vibrate with resonance. It seeks to possess all dragons, to turn their creative energy into destructive emptiness, to corrupt the very source of creation and use it to unmake reality itself. The illusion shifted again, showing dragons being consumed by black corruption, their forms twisted into nightmarish versions of themselves. Where once they brought life, now they spread death. Where once they created, now they destroyed. But worse than the physical transformation was what Goku could sense about their essence. The creative spark that made them dragons was still there, but inverted, corrupted, turned against its own nature. We thought it was sealed away eons ago, Tiamat continued, her red head speaking now while the others remained silent. Bound by the sacrifice of the previous Dragon King and held in a prison dimension where it could touch nothing, influence nothing, spread to nothing. The words hit Goku like a physical blow. The previous Dragon King had sacrificed himself to stop this threat. The magnitude of what he was facing began to sink in, settling over his shoulders like a weight that threatened to crush him. This was not like fighting Frieza or Cell or even Beerus. Those had been opponents he could punch, could overcome with sufficient strength and determination. This was something that attacked the fundamental nature of reality itself. How did it return? Goku asked, his mind already working through possibilities, strategies, potential solutions. Years of battle experience combined with his new cosmic awareness created a unique perspective. He could see both the immediate tactical situation and the larger cosmic implications. His Saiyan warrior instincts wanted to charge forward, confront the threat directly, but his Dragon King wisdom knew that this required careful thought and planning. Seals weaken over time, Shenron explained, his voice carrying the sadness of inevitability, especially when they're designed to contain something that actively works against existence itself. You must understand, the black energy is not mindless. It is intelligent in a way that transcends conventional consciousness. It has been patient, working from within its prison for countless ages, slowly eroding the barriers that held it. Each tiny crack it created was repaired, but each repair was slightly weaker than the original structure. Over eons, the accumulated weakening became critical. And now, Goku prompted, though he feared he already knew the answer. Now it's free, Shenron finished, his voice heavy with sorrow and resignation. The seal finally broke, and the black energy has emerged into our reality once more. Goku's Shinron senses painted a clearer picture of the spreading corruption. He could feel it now, like an oil slick spreading across the pristine waters of creation. Each dragon it touched became a vector for more infection, the corruption spreading exponentially. It was strategic in its spread, moving with intelligence and purpose rather than simply expanding outward randomly. An ancient dragon named Io, whose scales were translucent like crystal and showed swirling nebulae within, spoke up from the back of the chamber. His voice was like wind chimes, musical and otherworldly. We must understand the pattern of infection. Which realms fell first? How is it spreading? If we can identify the pattern, perhaps we can predict where it will strike next and prepare defenses. The council quickly organized, ancient dragons who had lived through countless crises falling into practiced roles with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Some reached out through the dragon network, trying to establish contact with distant realms, calling out to dragons across the infinite expanses of creation to assess their status. Others began mapping the spread of the corruption, creating multi-dimensional charts that showed not just space, but time and probability, tracking how the black energy moved through reality. Others dove into ancient archives, seeking any scrap of knowledge about the black energy that might offer insight. Old texts, forgotten prophecies, accounts from the last time this threat had emerged. Goku stood at the center of it all, his Shinron form allowing him to process information from multiple sources simultaneously. His consciousness expanded to touch the dragon network, feeling the vast web of light that stretched across infinity. He could see where that web was going dark, nodes of light winking out one by one as dragons fell to the corruption. It was like watching a constellation fade, stars going dark in an accelerating pattern. It's strategic, Goku observed, his tactical mind recognizing the pattern as it emerged. It's not just spreading randomly, it's isolating targets, corrupting them when they're alone and vulnerable, then using them to attack others. It's building an army, using our own people against us. It's fighting smart. Bahamut nodded grimly, his platinum scales reflecting the grim determination on Goku's face. The black energy is not mindless. It is intelligent in a way that transcends conventional consciousness. It is known that terror is a weapon as effective as any physical force. It will use every advantage against us, exploit every weakness, turn every strength into a liability if it can. As they worked to map the corruption spread, studying the patterns and trying to predict its next moves, the first corrupted dragons began to appear at the council chamber itself. They arrived through tears in dimensional space, ripping holes in reality with their corrupted power. The very act of their arrival was wrong, sending ripples of discord through the cosmic harmony that normally suffused the dragon realm. Their forms were twisted and wrong in ways that made Goku's eyes hurt to look at them directly. Where their scales had once shone with vibrant colors, brilliant reds, deep blues, shining golds, now they were black as obsidian, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was like looking at holes in reality, spaces where existence itself had been cut away. Their eyes, once filled with wisdom or joy or curiosity, were now empty voids rimmed with sickly red energy that pulsed with malevolent purpose. But what was worst was that Goku could still sense who they had been. Their essences, their fundamental identities were still present beneath the corruption. They weren't dead or replaced. They were trapped, imprisoned in their own bodies, while the black energy used them as puppets. He could feel their anguish, their desperate attempts to fight back from within the corruption, their horror at what they were being forced to do. The corrupted dragons attacked without warning, without mercy. They moved with a coordination that was horrifying to witness, their individual personalities completely subsumed by the black energy's will. Dragons who had once been friends, family, students, now they were weapons aimed at the heart of creation itself. They fought with a savagery that was foreign to their true natures, employing tactics that no honorable dragon would use, targeting weaknesses with cold precision. Goku's first instinct was to fight, and that instinct was overpowering. His Saiyan nature, honed through countless battles, screamed at him to protect his people, to strike down the threat before it could harm anyone else. Every fiber of his being wanted to charge forward, to transform into his most powerful state, to unleash the full might of his Shinron form against these corrupted beings. He moved with blinding speed, his body responding to his will before conscious thought could even form. His Shinron form granting him power that dwarfed even his Ultra Instinct, allowing him to perceive and react to threats at a level that would have seemed like magic to his younger self. He intercepted a corrupted dragon that was diving towards a group of younger council members, smaller dragons who had been listening and learning from the elders. The corrupted dragon was Pyraxis, he realized with a shock, a young dragon he had personally trained in cosmic energy manipulation just months before.
Pyraxis had been so eager to learn, so full of questions and enthusiasm. He had reminded Goku of Gohan at that age, brilliant and curious and kind. They had spent hours together, Goku teaching him how to sense the cosmic flow, how to channel creative energy without exhausting himself, how to shape reality with gentle precision rather than brute force. Pyraxis had been getting so good at it, showing a natural talent that exceeded even some ancient dragons. Now that promising young dragon was a corrupted shell, his eyes empty voids, his body radiating wrongness. Goku caught him mid-flight, his hands gripping Pyraxis' shoulders and redirecting his momentum away from the younger dragons. The corrupted dragon thrashed in his grip with strength born of desperation and the unnatural power of the black energy, his roar a pure anguish mixed with inhuman rage. Black energy crackled around Pyraxis' body like dark lightning, trying to spread to Goku to corrupt him as well. Goku could feel it probing at him, searching for any opening, any weakness it could exploit. The sensation was violating, like having something try to crawl inside his mind and soul. But his Shinron form was anathema to the corruption. The pure creative energy that flowed through him actively repelled the void, creating a barrier that the black energy couldn't penetrate. "I'm sorry," Goku whispered to the corrupted dragon, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Pyraxis. I'll find a way to save you. I promise." He struck, not to kill, but to incapacitate, channeling his energy in a precise burst that should have knocked the corrupted dragon unconscious without causing permanent harm. It was a technique he had practiced countless times, learned to perfect through his training sessions with various dragons. The right amount of force, applied to the right pressure points, could temporarily shut down a dragon's consciousness without causing real damage. But something went wrong. The moment his energy connected with the corrupted form, instead of the expected result, the black energy feeding on Pyraxis suddenly surged. The corruption spread faster, consuming more of the dragon's essence, dark tendrils spreading further across his scales. And worse, it seemed to grow stronger. The black aura around Pyraxis intensified, pulsing with increased power, and when he broke free from Goku's grip with a violent thrash, he moved with even greater speed and ferocity than before. "Goku, stop!" Bahamut's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Don't fight them!" But it was too late. Other dragons, seeing their king engage the corrupted, had instinctively joined the battle.
They moved to protect the younger members of the council, to defend their home, to strike back against the threat. It was natural, instinctive. When attacked, you fight back. But natural instincts were exactly what the black energy was counting on. The chamber erupted into violence as corrupted dragons clashed with uncorrupted ones. Energy blasts that could vaporize planets flew back and forth, leaving trails of distorted space-time in their wake. Dragons bit and clawed and breathed elemental fury at each other. Reality itself began to crack under the strain of so much power being unleashed in concentrated space. Hairline fractures in the very fabric of existence. And with each clash, each strike, each defensive maneuver, the black energy grew stronger. Goku could see it with his Shinran senses, could feel it like a growing weight on the fabric of creation. Every act of violence, every dragon struck down, even in self-defense, fed the corruption like fuel poured on a fire. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it. "Cease!" Bahamut's voice carried such authority, backed by such overwhelming force of will, that even mid-strike, dragons froze. Combat stopped as if time itself had paused. This is what it wants. Every dragon we strike down, every blow we land, it feeds the black energy. We are doing its work for it. The revelation crashed over Goku like a tidal wave, nearly staggering him with the implications. This wasn't a foe he could punch into submission. This wasn't like Frieza, who got stronger through training but could still be overcome with superior power. This wasn't even like Jiren, where greater power and determination in pushing past your limits could win the day. This was something fundamentally different, an enemy that grew stronger from the very act of opposition. Fighting it directly only made it more powerful. Defending against it fed energy. Even trying to protect the innocent gave it exactly what it wanted. It was a perfect trap, exploiting the very nature of what made dragons who they were, their desire to protect, to fight against threats, to stand up for what is right. The corrupted dragons, no longer facing active resistance, hovered in the air around the council chamber like dark angels of death. They didn't press their attack now that the defenders had stopped fighting, simply surrounded the assembled dragons like a tightening noose. It was psychological warfare of the cruelest kind, forcing the uncorrupted to watch their friends and loved ones transformed into weapons, knowing that to fight back would only make things worse. The corrupted dragon's empty eyes stared at them, void-like and unblinking, a constant reminder of what awaited them all if the black energy wasn't stopped. "Then how do we stop it?" Goku demanded, his voice carrying the frustration of a warrior denied the ability to protect, the helplessness of someone watching people he cared about suffer while being unable to act. Bahamut's ancient eyes met his, and in them he saw something that chilled him more than the black energy itself. Resignation. The look of someone who knows exactly what must be done, but wishes desperately that there was another way. "The only way to stop it," Bahamut began, his voice heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge accumulated over eons, "is to contain it, to draw it all into one place and seal it as was done before. But that requires a vessel strong enough to hold it." The implication hung in the air like a death sentence, so obvious that no one needed to state it explicitly. But Tiamat did anyway, her voice soft with mixture of respect and mourning.
"You are the Dragon King," all five of her heads said in perfect unison, then lowered in something between respect and mourning, a gesture of acknowledgement to one about to make the ultimate sacrifice. "Your Shinran form makes you uniquely suited to this task. Your power is vast enough to contain the corruption, perhaps the only power in all of creation vast enough. Your creative energy is strong enough to counteract its void, to hold it in perfect balance where neither can overcome the other. And your connection to the Dragon Network is deep enough to draw it all into yourself, to call the corruption home like a beacon." "But the last Dragon King died doing this," Shinran added, his voice cracking with emotion that he didn't try to hide. Dragons did not cry in the way mortals did, but Goku could feel his friend's anguish through their bond, could sense the tears that would have fallen if Shinran's physiology allowed it. The seal requires not just power, but sacrifice. You would have to willingly accept the black energy into yourself, open yourself to it completely, and let it pour into your being. Then you would have to contain it within your essence, holding it through sheer force of will. And finally, you would have to seal yourself away from all reality to prevent any possibility of it escaping. Eternal imprisonment in a void between dimensions, forever containing a force that wants nothing more than to consume all of existence. Goku stood silent, processing what they were asking of him. His mind, enhanced by the Shinran form, could see all the implications instantly. It wasn't death they were proposing. Death would be a mercy by comparison. This was something worse, something that made death look like a pleasant afternoon nap. Eternal imprisonment, locked away in a void between dimensions, forever containing a force that would never stop trying to break free. No afterlife, no reincarnation, no rest or peace or release. Just endless vigilance against an enemy that would never stop trying to escape, would never tire, would never give up. He would be conscious through it all, aware of every passing moment, alone with his thoughts and his regrets, and the constant pressure of containing something that wanted to unmake all of reality. He thought of his friends back on Earth, the people who had shaped him into who he was. Vegeta, who had started as his greatest enemy and become more than a rival, a brother in all but blood, someone who understood him in ways that perhaps no one else could. They had pushed each other to greater and greater heights, had saved each other's lives more times than either would admit, had developed a bond forged in combat and tempered by mutual respect. Gohan, his firstborn son, who had surpassed him in so many ways. Goku had always known that Gohan's potential exceeded his own, had seen it in his eyes even when he was young. Gohan had achieved Super Saiyan 2 before Goku had unlocked his mystic potential, had balanced the life of a warrior with the life of a scholar in ways Goku never could. He was everything Goku hoped he would be and more. Strong when he needed to be, but preferring peace, brilliant and kind and good. Goten, who carried his smile and his kind heart, who had achieved Super Saiyan at an even younger age than Gohan had. Goten reminded him of himself at that age, always ready for adventure, always excited to train and get stronger, but with a gentleness and joy that made everyone around him happy. His granddaughter Pan, who represented everything he had fought for, the next generation, living in peace. She had her mother's fierce determination and her father's intelligence, combined with the Saiyan love of combat that ran through their bloodline. She was the future, the promise that all their sacrifices meant something. Bulma, whose genius had enabled so much of what they had accomplished. Chi-Chi, who had put up with him for decades despite his flaws and absences. Piccolo, his first true friend in many ways, who had evolved from enemy to ally to family. Krillin, his oldest friend, who had stood by him since they were children training under Master Roshi. If he did this, if he accepted this sacrifice, he would never see them again, never share another meal with them, the simple pleasure of eating Chi-Chi's cooking or whatever elaborate feast Bulma might throw together, never spar with Vegeta, trading blows and insults in equal measure, never watch his grandchildren grow, never meet any future descendants who might carry his legacy forward, never hear their laughter or dry their tears or offer the simple comfort of presence. He would become a story to them, then a legend, then eventually a myth, and finally forgotten altogether. Memories would fade over generations, the details would be lost. Eventually, no one would remember Son Goku the person, only Son Goku the Dragon King who had saved creation. And even that would fade, until he was nothing more than a footnote in ancient histories that few would bother to read. All while remaining conscious, trapped, fighting an eternal battle against the void, aware of everything he was missing, knowing that life continued without him, that his friends and family would grieve and then move on, that the world would keep spinning and he would not be part of it. But if he didn't do it, the black energy would consume everything. Every dragon, every realm, every universe. Earth and everyone on it would eventually fall to the corruption. It might take time. The black energy would spread from realm to realm, corrupting and consuming, but it would be inexorable. Eventually, it would reach Universe 7. Eventually, it would reach Earth. And when it did, who would stop it? Vegeta was strong, but not strong enough for this. Gohan had amazing potential, but had chosen the path of a scholar over a warrior. There was no one else with the power to seal the black energy. The infection would spread until there was nothing left but emptiness. Not even the void of space, which at least had potential, had the possibility of stars forming and life emerging. No, the black energy would create true nothingness, the absence of even the potential for existence. It wasn't really a choice at all. When he looked at it clearly, without emotion clouding his judgment, there was only one possible answer. The Dragon King's duty was to protect creation, and if that required his eternal suffering, then so be it. But before Goku could speak, before he could voice the decision that was forming in his heart with all the weight of absolute certainty, his Shinran senses suddenly screamed.
Warning, so loud it was like a dagger through his skull. He gasped, staggering, his hand going to his chest as if he'd been physically struck. The sensation was so intense it overrode everything else, cutting through even his contemplation of cosmic sacrifice. Something was wrong, terribly, catastrophically wrong. Not here in the Dragon Realm, but somewhere else, somewhere that mattered to him more than any other place in all of creation, more even than his duty as Dragon King. His consciousness amplified by the Shinran form to levels that allowed him to perceive things across infinite distances, stretched across dimensions in the direction of the disturbance. Through the barriers between realms, across the gulf of space and time that separated the Dragon Realm from mortal reality, his awareness raced toward Universe 7, toward a small blue planet on the edge of an unremarkable galaxy, toward Earth, toward home. What he saw made his blood turn to ice in his veins, made his heart clench with a fear more primal than anything the black energy could inspire. Massive disruptions in the life energy he knew so well, power signatures he had memorized as intimately as his own heartbeat, suddenly vanishing. Not suppressed, not hidden, not teleported away or knocked unconscious. Gone, erased from existence with such finality that not even their souls remained. Removed from reality so completely it was as if they had never existed at all. No, he whispered, the word barely audible, but carrying such anguish that every dragon in the chamber turned to him, their own concerns momentarily forgotten in the face of their king's obvious distress. Vegeta's energy signature, that proud flame that had burned alongside his own through so many battles, that fierce determination that had pushed them both to greater heights, snuffed out in an instant, there and gone, as if it had never existed at all. One moment, Goku could feel his old rival's presence across the dimensional divide, that familiar mixture of pride and determination and barely suppressed rage that was so quintessentially Vegeta. The next moment, nothing, not even an echo. Bra, Vegeta's daughter, who had inherited her father's strength and her mother's brilliance, who had so much potential and so much life ahead of her, erased, gone as completely as if she had never been born. Trunks, the boy who had traveled through time to save them all, who had faced horrors that would have broken lesser men and emerged stronger for it, who had grown into a man of such courage and determination, gone. The fusion energy of Gotenks, that wild and chaotic power that represented the unity of his son and Vegeta's son, two boys who had become so close they could merge into a single being, extinguished like a candle flame in a hurricane. Gohan, his firstborn, his son who had once surpassed them all, who had chosen knowledge over battle but remained one of Earth's greatest defenders, who had given him a granddaughter he adored. The boy he had held as a baby, had trained in the wilderness, had watched grow into a man, gone. Oob, the reincarnation of Kid Buu, the young man he had been training to become Earth's next guardian. Goku had seen so much potential in him, had been working with him to unlock the power that lay dormant within. He was supposed to be the future, the one who would protect Earth when Goku and the others were too old or too dead, destroyed before he could fulfill that destiny. And Pan, his granddaughter, his precious Pan, who carried his adventurous spirit and his love of fighting, but tempered with wisdom beyond her years. She was still alive. He could feel her energy signature blazing with desperate determination. But even as he watched with his cosmic awareness, it grew weaker. She was fighting something, giving everything she had, and she was losing. His Shinron sight pierced through the dimensional barriers completely now, ignoring the normal rules that kept realms separate. He could see the threat clearly, could witness the scene unfolding on Earth as if he were standing right there. A figure wrapped in purple and gold, feline in features, divine in nature. Beerus, the god of destruction of Universe 7, stood amidst the ruins of what had been a gathering of Earth's defenders. Around him, the very space where his friends and family had existed was simply empty. Not even ash remained, no bodies, no blood, no evidence that they had ever been there. Hakai, Goku realized. Beerus had used Hakai, the ultimate erasure technique that destroys not just the body, but the soul itself. There was no coming back from Hakai. No Dragon Balls could restore someone who had been subjected to that technique. They were simply gone, removed from existence at such a fundamental level that even the afterlife couldn't claim them. Beerus looked bored, almost irritated, as Pan launched another desperate attack. The young woman was giving everything she had, her power flaring to levels that would have impressed even Goku. She had clearly broken through multiple barriers in this fight, pushed past limits she didn't even know she had in her desperation to survive, to avenge her fallen family. Her gi was torn and stained with blood, her face swollen from impacts, but she was still standing, still fighting, refusing to give up even as Beerus prepared to end her. "Why?" he voiced was barely human now, caught between the divine authority of the Dragon King and the primal rage of a father, grandfather, and warrior watching his loved ones die. It came as a growl, a sound of such anguish and fury that reality itself seemed to recoil from it. Shinron moved beside him, his expression stricken with sympathy and concern. "I don't know. Beerus is capricious, we know this. He has destroyed planets for trivial reasons. Bad food, being woken from sleep, simple boredom. But this level of destruction, targeting Earth's defenders specifically? There must be a reason. There has to be." "No, I don't care about his reasons," Goku snarled. And for a moment, the Saiyan warrior that lived in his heart overwhelmed the Dragon King, pushed aside all the cosmic wisdom and responsibility to leave only rage and grief. "My family, my friends, he just erased them. Not killed, erased. They can't even go to the afterlife, can't be wished back. They're just gone." And Pan, even as he watched with his enhanced senses, Pan fell to one knee, her energy flickering like a dying flame. She was at her absolute limit, had pushed beyond what her body could handle. Blood dripped from countless wounds and her breathing was labored. But still she tried to stand, tried to raise her hands for one more attack. That was his granddaughter, stubborn as her grandfather, brave as her father, refusing to give up even in the face of certain death. Beerus raised one clawed finger and reality itself seemed to bend around it. The energy of destruction gathered at that singular point, a sphere of purple-black energy that radiated finality. Not power in the conventional sense. This was the fundamental force of ending, of cessation, of the universe's inexorable march toward entropy given form and purpose. It was beautiful in its own terrible way, and absolutely inescapable once unleashed. No! Goku screamed, but he was too far away, separated by dimensions and by the duties that bound him. He was the Dragon King, not just a warrior who could rush off whenever he pleased. He had responsibilities here, a crisis that required his immediate attention. The black energy was spreading, corrupting more dragons with each passing moment. If he left now, there would be no one to seal it, no one to prevent it from consuming all of creation. But none of that mattered in the face of seeing Pan about to die. Then something inside him snapped. The carefully maintained balance between his duties as the Dragon King and his nature as a Saiyan warrior shattered like glass. The black energy, the dragon realm, the cosmic responsibilities that he had accepted, none of it mattered in the face of his family being destroyed. Not just threatened, not just in danger, but actually dying right before his eyes while he stood paralyzed by duty. All his life, Goku had fought to protect the people he cared about. That had been his driving force from his earliest days training under Master Roshi to his battles against gods and universe-destroying threats. Protecting others wasn't just what he did, it was who he was at his core. Take that away, ask him to stand by and watch his family die for the sake of some greater good, and what was left? What kind of person could do that? What kind of king demanded that kind of sacrifice? The Saiyan nature that had defined him for his entire life surged to the forefront, overriding everything else. He was not primarily the Dragon King, he realized. That was a role he had accepted, a responsibility he had taken on, but it wasn't who he was. He was Son Goku, the Saiyan raised on Earth, the husband to Chi-Chi, the father to Gohan and Goten, grandfather to Pan, and friends to those who were now dead or dying. And he would not let Pan die, not while he still had breath in his body and power in his limbs, not while he could do something to stop it. "I'm sorry," he said to the assembled dragons, his voice carrying absolute finality. It was not a request for permission or understanding, it was a statement of fact. "I'm sorry, but I have to go. Earth needs me, my family needs me." "Goku, wait!" Bahamut called out, his voice urgent, almost desperate. The ancient dragon moved forward, trying to physically block his path, which was a testament to how serious the situation was. Bahamut almost never moved unnecessarily. "If you leave now, who will seal the black energy? It will continue to spread. It will consume realm after realm, universe after universe. Billions will die. Then you'll have to find another way." Goku shot back, his energy already building, preparing for the dimensional jump. Silver light began to pour off his body as the Shinrin form activated fully, responding to his desperate need for power.